Thanks a lot, David. Thanks to the rest of the panel too. It was insightful to hear from Darren and from Cecilia. My name is Dan McDunn. I live and work out of Berkeley. And since 2017, we've built about 30 ADUs. My market area is from Piedmont and Rockridge on the southern boundary to like the El Cerrito Hills as sort of the northeastern boundary. And I personally consider that to be one market area when it comes to costs and construction costs. There's certainly some nuances to the topography and the site accessibility and permitting to some extent, but I've defined a very narrow geographic area so I can deliver high quality control to my clients and really know the ins and outs of the specific submarkets down to knowing pretty much all the building inspectors in Berkeley, Piedmont, El Cerrito, and not all of Oakland, but the ones that were North Oakland by first name and know what they're going to be looking for. And that really is probably my number one point as it comes to building in your specific submarket, is to hire a design team that has that sort of level of intimate knowledge with the permitting department and with the building inspectors, because they're just, when it comes down to it, it's a very a human-oriented business. And so knowing your fellow humans and what they're looking for in the process of submitting a set of plans or delivering a completed product is the number one thing that I would recommend. That's why I don't go to Orinda or Danville or San Rafael, because I just would never be able to deliver the same level of service I could if I was to expand my territory that much. And so I think that kind of gets to the next point, and I alluded to it, is costs. And you at Rockridge, the costs I would say would be analogous to what they would be in Piedmont or Albany or Berkeley. And my back of the napkin market touches on Cecilia's point, which is that those first few hundred square feet are extremely expensive. You have one bathroom and one kitchen, one electrical panel, one waste line, one water line, soon to be no more gas lines. But all those things are the same hard cost on a dollar basis as for 200 square feet as they would be for 2,000 square feet. So they just don't scale down well. So I think kind of the floor to build anything, site built, prefab, whatever it is, I think there's a natural floor for new construction in someone's backyard at $150,000 to $180,000. That's probably what just the bottom, and then the marginal square foot goes down from there. But if you were to build a typical 550 square foot unit, the range of costs from a local builder, I think would be, you'd expect to spend between $500 and $800 per square foot to build that. And if you build larger, you could come down. I've priced projects recently as low as $400 a square foot for a 2-unit ADU complex, 2,200 square feet behind a 9-plex in Berkeley. That's the extreme low end, up to $1,000 a foot for a very, very small hillside and complicated building site. So it's just going to vary. If you are cost constrained, make sure you're designing with that in mind, and your architecture and your design team is on board with your expectations. And things that you can control there are roof line, window package, finishes to a large extent, or those are the big levers in building shape. A square is cheaper than an L or a T, for example. And make sure everyone's on the same page with what you're hoping to deliver, or maybe bring a builder on board early in the process to help, so you're not going down a rabbit hole with costs that you can never execute. I will say that the last 10 or so projects that I built have come in right around $600 a square foot for that 400 to 700 square foot building. And that kind of touches on a point that came up today. What is the resale value? This ADU phenomenon is quite new. And so particularly things that have been built within the last few years, what are they worth on an open market or exit scenario if you're selling your real estate? It just happens that today I got wind from one of my clients that built in 2017, who's like a lot of people leaving the Bay Area for, in their minds, better climates or different environments, etc. He is selling his property out at 1,400 square feet, including the ADU, at $1,300 a square foot. And the buyer applied a valuation of $1,300 to his 280 square foot ADU. So that 280 feet cost him about 3 years ago. It cost him under 200 grand, and he's getting a value of 370, 380 for it in the eyes of the buyer pool. So what I'm saying sounds expensive. If you're all Rockridge residents, I'd say your real estate is hovering at around $1,000 a square foot if you were to sell it. And so I think you have a pretty compelling case that we're creating a tremendous amount of equity even at the cost that I'm sort of kind of quoting off the cuff. Another issue that's sort of come up recently is just the second meter requirement for the electrical panels. This is sort of a PG&E rule that hadn't been enforced until the last 6 or 8 months. So to some people that's an advantage, to others it's a disadvantage. But I think one thing people should plan for, particularly if your design and construction team is new, is that you are very likely going to need a new electrical meter. And in the execution of that new electrical meter, you're likely to trigger sort of a whole house panel upgrade in addition to the ADU. I guess I have another kind of final point as it relates to building. It takes us between 4 and 6 months to build an ADU in the backyard and in the market area that we work. That's I think what you could expect. And lastly, prefab. I mean, this market is developing very quickly. I think someone one day will write a case study for a business school about the onset of ADU in the marketplace and what has taken place. It's become very quickly very crowded with a lot of venture capital funded startups. A lot of guys that have an Uber pedigree, literally, that are raising money to develop and build ADUs. As such, I think there's some unrealistic claims being delivered by people that don't have a lot of experience actually building anything. Now, I was in the 90s capitalized on Cosmo.com and often got Snickers bars delivered at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't pay any delivery fee for that. 99 cents for a 3 o'clock Snickers bar. So I would never begrudge anybody from capitalizing on what I would consider a transfer of wealth from venture capital to homeowners through the ADU market. So if you are able to find a builder that you're happy with and you can believe the story and buy into their pricing model and believe they'll execute, I think you should absolutely capitalize on that. But kind of beware, the Contractor State License Board limits your deposit to $1,000. That would be your max that you should be willing to risk losing to a startup vendor. So that's not to take a parting shot at anybody. I wish them all the best. I do want to kind of give that alert because I'm encountering it a lot, and particularly lately, and just something to note. So
Dan, you just responded to an interesting question in the chat that I want to make sure everybody sees. So there's a lot of uncertainty now in our housing markets and urban trends as people respond to the pandemic and how it's changed how we interact with cities and with each other. Could you speak to a little about how you are seeing that impact the ADU market and any clients that are planning to rent their units out as long-term housing?
Yeah, we can read about the broader rental market suffering in light of the pandemic, but I was talking to a property management friend of mine today, and this actually I have a single family home that I'm completing. It's under construction. I'm contemplating renting it, and I was asking about the market for rent, and she said the single family home market is extremely strong as people leave the cities and they leave dense multi-family buildings. They want more space. I think that's true of the ADU market also. We just finished one by Monterey Market, and my client is just getting it on the market, and she's had overwhelming interest in her limited advertisement, which just really began this week. I had another one on Acton. I'm in touch with that client because we're doing something at his primary residence, and his re-rent, his initial rent was $2,450 on it was 300 square foot little teeny tiny studio, and he re-rented. He lost $100. He's down to $2,350, but he's renting like $6 or $7 a square foot. And I think Ryan over at Inspired ADUs just put in the chat. By the way, Inspired ADUs is fantastic. We've done 5 or 6 projects with them, and They do a really excellent job of incorporating senior and aging in place elements into great design. So really can't say enough good things about them. But he said he's got their most recent rental in Oakland is $3,900 a month for a 737 square foot, which supports kind of what the anecdotal data I've just reported on for renting ADUs.
If you want an ADU that elevates your backyard living, check this playlist out. If you want more information like what Dan just presented in that webinar, check this out. And consider subscribing, because we are all about elevating that backyard living.